You see a dog across the street. You've never met this dog. No shared history, no mutual friends, and yet something deep in your body takes over. Your hand rises, you're crouched on the pavement, whispering "hi baby" to a stranger's golden retriever like it's the most natural thing in the world. And the wild part? It is. Because this isn't just a you thing, it's a cross-cultural, deeply neurological, almost embarrassingly universal human behavior. We pet dogs, cats, bunnies, horses, capybaras, the occasional very confused lizard. We see a small creature and our hands just go, and nobody has ever really sat down and explained why. Until now. Let's start with the obvious question. Is it just that animals are cute? That feels like the simple answer. You see something cute, you want to touch it. Case closed. But the cute instinct is way more complicated than it looks. When you see a creature with big round eyes, a small nose, chubby cheeks, and a large forehead relative to its face, your brain doesn't just produce a vague, pleasant feeling. It enters a very specific neurological state researchers have studied for decades. The original theory came from an Austrian ethologist named Konrad Lorenz back in 1943. He called it Kindschema, German for baby schema. His idea was that certain physical features trigger caregiving instincts in adult humans. Round face, big eyes, small chin, soft features, wobbly, uncoordinated movements. All of these evolved in human infants specifically to hijack adult brains into protecting and nurturing them. Evolution built a visual exploit directly into your neurological operating system and called it a baby. Lorenz's genuinely ahead of its time observation was that these same features, found in other species, trigger the exact same response. Your brain doesn't check whether the thing in front of you is your offspring. It doesn't perform a species check. It sees big round eyes and a small face, fires the caregiving circuitry, and suddenly you're experiencing a protective parental instinct toward an animal you met 11 seconds ago in a parking lot. Decades later, when researchers put people in fMRI machines and showed them photos of baby animals, Lorenz turned out to be essentially correct the brain lights up in specific regions linked to reward processing and emotional salience. Looking at a cute animal isn't passive. It's a measurable neurological event, happening before you've even touched anything. And touching is a completely different layer on top of all of this. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The human sense of touch is absurdly sophisticated. We think of touch as one sense, but it's actually a collection of different systems running simultaneously. Your skin is covered in different types of receptors responding to pressure, vibration, texture, temperature. One specific type, studied in more depth relatively recently in the context of social touch, is called C-tactile afferents nerve fibers almost perfectly tuned to slow, gentle stroking at a very specific speed. Not firm pressure, not sharp pain slow, soft stroking. When these fibers activate, they send signals not just to the part of your brain that processes where you're being touched, but to areas tied to emotion, social bonding, and reward. These fibers exist to make gentle touch feel emotionally meaningful, not just physically registered. And running your hands slowly over soft fur activates that pathway almost perfectly. The texture, the warmth, the gentle resistance. It's as if fur was designed to interface with this exact system. Pet a dog, and you're literally triggering a pathway that evolved for social bonding and is now firing because of a Labrador. This is chemistry specifically. Oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone, though neuroscientists are a little tired of that reductive label since it does considerably more work than that. Oxytocin releases during positive physical touch, hugging someone you love, holding a baby, any physical affection. Multiple well-designed studies have shown that just a few minutes of petting a dog, making eye contact, being physically close, significantly elevates oxytocin in humans. Measurable spikes in a bonding hormone from a few minutes of contact. And here's the part that feels almost unfair in how wholesome it is. The oxytocin spikes in the dog too. You're both experiencing the same neurochemical response that bonds parents to children and partners to each other. You walked up to a stranger's dog on the street and accidentally fell a little bit in love with it, and so did the dog. That's not sentimentality. That's biology working exactly as designed. But why soft things specifically? Why fur and not, say, gravel? Part of the answer is tactile memory and early association. As infants, we spend an enormous portion of our early existence in close contact with warm, soft things: skin, fabric, blankets, other bodies. The association between softness and safety gets coded into your nervous system extremely early. Before language, before conscious memory, soft equals safety. Soft equals closeness. Soft equals comfort. That association persists your entire life in ways your conscious mind rarely notices. There's also temperature, which is underrated. Fur is warm, and warm things signal at a deep neurological level that something is alive. Placing your hand on something warm and slightly yielding produces an almost immediate drop in measurable stress markers. Heart rate slows. Cortisol begins to decrease. Your nervous system recognizes the warmth as another living body and downregulates your threat response, whether you decided to relax or not. Then there's sound. Cat purring has been studied extensively, partly because the more you look at it, the stranger it gets. The sound comes from rapid movement of the laryngeal muscles, vibrating dozens of times per second as the cat breathes both in and out. The frequency of a typical purr falls between 25 and 150 Hz, most commonly 25 to 50. And here's where it gets genuinely strange. Frequencies in that exact range have been documented in clinical contexts to promote bone healing, reduce inflammation, and accelerate soft tissue recovery. There are physical therapy protocols using mechanical vibration at these precise frequencies to help patients heal faster. So when a cat purrs on your chest, you're not just hearing a sound, you're being gently vibrated at a frequency that may actively promote healing in your body. Cats walk around being accidentally therapeutic, ignoring you and judging your bookshelves while passively emitting frequencies that might be good for your bones. We should find them irresistible. They're remarkable. Now let's talk about the compulsive part, because I think this is the most interesting piece. It's not just that petting animals feels good, plenty of things feel good, and we manage to restrain ourselves around them in public. The weird thing about animals is the urge feels almost impossible to override. You know intellectually you should ask before petting someone's dog. You know the cat at your friend's apartment has already given you 2 very clear warnings. You do it anyway. Part of it is approach motivation. When your brain identifies something as potentially rewarding and cute, soft, warm animals fire, essentially every reward signal your brain can generate it creates a motivational pull that precedes conscious decision-making. You're not thinking, I want to pet that dog. The motivational circuitry already moved your hand. Your conscious mind is catching up to something your body already started. The same basic reward approach circuitry that pulls you toward food when you're hungry or toward someone you find attractive is generating the impulse to close the distance and make contact. You are, in the most literal sense, drawn to it. Then there's something researchers call cute aggression, which sounds alarming and is actually fascinating. The experience of seeing something so overwhelmingly cute, you feel a strange, almost aggressive urge in response, wanting to squeeze it, saying I could eat you up, making little mock-threatening gestures towards something you have zero intention of harming. Researchers at Yale studied this seriously and found it isn't random, it appears to be a regulatory response. When something produces more positive emotion than the system can easily handle, the brain generates a counterbalancing negative impulse as a way of managing the overload. Your brain is overwhelmed by how cute something is and isn't handling it gracefully, which means the slightly unhinged urge to squeeze a kitten into another dimension is a sign your brain is working exactly as intended. You're welcome. Is any of this unique to humans? Turns out, kind of no. Wild primates have been observed approaching other species with no obvious survival function, carefully handling small animals, exhibiting what researchers describe with appropriate caution as apparent curiosity and gentleness. Capuchin monkeys have been filmed doing this. Great apes in captivity frequently develop affectionate relationships with other species they live near, not just other primates, but dogs, cats, birds, rabbits. Koko, the gorilla taught American Sign Language over decades of research, had multiple pet cats over her life. She requested them by name, handled them with consistent gentleness, and when one died, produced signs her researchers interpreted as grief. A gorilla grieving a small domestic cat because touching it and being near it had meant something real to her. Touch is not a human invention. The drive for it runs through more of the animal kingdom than we typically acknowledge. And if you want to understand how ancient this really is, Look at coevolution, because the relationship between humans and dogs specifically is not a coincidence. It's the product of an estimated 15 to 40,000 years of genuine mutual adaptation. We've been living, working, and sleeping near each other for so long that we've measurably, biologically changed one another. Dogs are uniquely sensitive to human social cues in ways their closest wild relatives, wolves, simply are not. Even wolves raised by humans from birth don't spontaneously follow a pointing finger the way dogs do. Dogs track human eye gaze, and that eye contact triggers the same oxytocin loop we already talked about. But here's the detail I find almost too good to be true. Dogs have developed a specific facial muscle, the levator anguli oculi medialis, that's absent or badly underdeveloped in wolves. This muscle produces the inner brow raise, the puppy eyes expression that makes something in your chest completely dissolve. Dogs evolved an anatomical structure specifically for producing that look. It's the result of thousands of years of selection favoring dogs better at triggering positive emotional responses in humans' dogs, better at getting us to touch them, feed them, keep them close. We did not domesticate dogs. We domesticated each other. And every time you reach out to pet one, you're responding to thousands of years of very deliberate social engineering from the other side. What's worth sitting with, and I think it's the most important part of all this, is what happens to us when we're denied touch, not just human touch, any touch. Touch deprivation is a real, measurable physiological stressor. During periods of enforced isolation, people with pets consistently show better mental health outcomes, lower baseline cortisol, lower rates of depression and anxiety than people without pets. And researchers have looked specifically at whether this is just about companionship in the abstract, or whether the physical contact itself matters. The evidence increasingly points to the contact being a meaningful, specific component. The hand on fur, the warm weight of a body against your leg, the actual tactile experience of touching something alive. In hospitals, animal-assisted therapy consistently reduces perceived pain and anxiety before procedures. Therapy dogs in schools lower stress responses in children under pressure. And the timeline is fast. 10 to 15 minutes of actually touching an animal produces statistically significant changes in cortisol and oxytocin. Your nervous system isn't slow about this. It knows what it needs, and it responds quickly when it gets it. We treat the impulse to pet animals like an endearing quirk, the thing that makes you 10 minutes late because you got ambushed by a dog on the sidewalk. But it's pointing to something much older and more serious. Touch is how mammals communicate safety to each other. It's one of the primary ways we regulate each other's nervous systems, how we express. Without language, something like, I see you, I'm here, you're not alone, everything is okay. For most of human history, we lived in constant, close physical proximity to animals, working animals, animals we raised, animals that slept near us for warmth and protection and company. The separation between humans and animals we now consider normal is extremely recent in evolutionary terms, almost cosmically recent. Your brain, your nervous system, your reward circuitry, none of it has caught up. All of it is still expecting to be near warm, soft, living things on a regular basis. You were never going to not pet the dog.